I'm Elara Vance, and just a few months ago, I never would have believed I'd be telling you this story. My parents, the people who raised me, my own flesh and blood, chose to kick me out of the home I built with my own hands. And why? For my brother's wife, who'd barely been part of the family for a year. The twist? They forgot one critical detail. I still owned the mortgage, every single dollar of it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My story with the house and with my family isn't a simple one. It began long before my brother Jasper brought his new wife, Serena, into the picture. It began, in fact, almost 2 decades ago, when I was just 19 and my parents were facing financial ruin. Their small construction business, once a source of immense pride, was collapsing under the weight of bad investments and a series of ill-fated projects. The dream they'd always held, to build their own home, a grand custom-designed house that would stand as a monument to their hard work and success, was slipping through their fingers. They'd secured the land, a beautiful, sprawling lot on the edge of town with old-growth trees and a small stream. But the funds to build were gone. That's where I stepped in. Fresh out of college with a degree in finance, I had a job offer from a major investment bank in the city. But instead of pursuing that path, I decided to use my signing bonus and what little savings I had to invest in my parents' dream. It was a massive leap of faith, one that many of my friends at the time couldn't understand. Why tether myself to my family's struggling enterprise when I had a clear path to independent success? But family, to me, was everything. My parents had sacrificed so much for Jasper and me, and I felt an immense responsibility to help them. So, with their blessing and genuine gratitude, I poured my initial capital into getting their business back on its feet, specifically earmarking funds for the construction of their dream home. For the next few years, I worked relentlessly. I took on freelance financial consulting gigs, often working late into the night after my regular job, saving every penny. My parents, in turn, worked with a renewed vigor, their spirits lifted by the prospect of finally realizing their vision. We chose the architectural plans together, poring over blueprints, debating every detail from the placement of windows to the type of flooring. It was a truly collaborative effort, a shared dream unfolding. I remember spending countless weekends on the construction site, not just supervising, but hands-on, learning the trade, hauling materials, and even assisting with the framing. My father, a master carpenter, taught me the intricacies of the craft, and my mother, with her impeccable eye for design, involved me in every aesthetic decision. The house wasn't just a structure. It was a testament to our collective resilience, our shared purpose. When the bank came to finalize the mortgage, it was my financial standing, my consistent income, and my clean credit history that secured the loan. My parents, still recovering from their previous financial setbacks, had less favorable terms. So, to ensure the lowest interest rate and the most manageable payments, we all agreed that my name would be the primary one on the mortgage. It made perfect sense at the time. I was stable, secure, and had contributed the majority of the initial investment. The deed, of course, was in all 3 of our names, a symbolic gesture of our shared ownership, a constant reminder that this was our family home, built together. It was a handshake agreement, reinforced by years of trust and shared struggle. The house belonged to all of us, but I was the one who was ensuring its financial stability. My parents never had to worry about a single mortgage payment. I handled it all, month after month, year after year. This arrangement, however, became a quiet point of contention for my parents' extended family, particularly my aunts and uncles. They came from a more traditional mindset, where the patriarch was expected to provide the primary financial backing for the home. I overheard hushed conversations at family gatherings, thinly veiled comments about Elara being too involved, or why didn't Jasper help more? My parents always brushed it off. defending our unique partnership, but the seeds of resentment, though invisible to me then, were clearly being sown. Life continued its carefully constructed rhythm for years. The house became the heart of our family, hosting countless holidays, birthdays, and Sunday dinners. I was always there, a constant presence, ensuring everything ran smoothly, from fixing a leaky faucet to managing the household budget. My parents, for their part, were always appreciative, though I sometimes sensed a subtle shift, a quiet deference towards Jasper, my younger brother. He'd never contributed financially to the house, choosing instead a more adventurous, if less stable, path. Jasper was the charming, free-spirited one, always chasing the next big idea, often requiring a helping hand from our parents, which they always generously provided. While I was the foundation, he was the flashy, unpredictable star. The dynamic changed irrevocably when Jasper announced he was getting married. His fiancée, Serena, was lovely, bright, and came from a well-to-do family. She was everything my parents had subtly hinted they wanted for Jasper, someone who could provide him with stability and connection. From the moment Serena entered, the picture, my parents' attention, which had always been largely focused on Jasper, now seemed to gravitate entirely towards her. They showered her with gifts, praised her accomplishments, and almost immediately began talking about her as the daughter they never had. It was a strange, unsettling feeling, like being slowly, imperceptibly, phased out of a role I had always held. I tried to be happy for them, genuinely. Serena seemed kind, and I wanted Jasper to be happy. But there was a noticeable shift in the family dynamic. Suddenly, my opinions on household matters, once eagerly sought, were politely disregarded. Conversations would abruptly switch topics when I entered the room. My parents would often make plans with Jasper and Serena without including me, even for events at our house. It was a subtle, insidious erosion, like grains of sand slipping through my fingers, but I felt it acutely. I started to notice how my mother would beam at Serena, a look of pure adoration that I hadn't seen directed at me since I was a little girl. My father, who had always confided in me about his business struggles, now seemed to turn exclusively to Jasper for advice, even though Jasper had no practical experience in construction or finance. The whispers from our extended family also grew, louder. Now, instead of marveling at my financial contributions, they began to question why I was still living at home or why I hadn't found my own place. It was as if my role as the primary financial backer and co-owner had been conveniently forgotten, replaced by a narrative that painted me as a perpetual dependent. Serena, meanwhile, effortlessly slipped into the role of the beloved new family member. She'd bring expensive wines to dinners, talk about her lavish vacations, and casually mention her parents' numerous properties. My parents would hang on her every word, their pride palpable. It was clear that Serena represented a certain social standing, a kind of success that my parents deeply admired and perhaps felt they had missed out on. Then came the conversation that set everything in motion. My parents called a family meeting. Just the four of us, them, Jasper, and me. I remember thinking it was odd, as they usually just brought things up casually. They sat me down, looking unusually serious. My mother started, her voice gentle but firm. "Elara," she began, "Jasper and Serena are thinking about starting a family, and they need a place to live, a place where they can really grow." My heart sank. I knew where this was going. My father chimed in. "This house, Elara, it's always been our dream, but it's also a big house. We thought with Jasper and Serena starting their new life, it would be the perfect place for them." The words hit me like a physical blow. They weren't asking. They were telling. They were implicitly suggesting that I should move out. The house, our house, the one I had poured my life savings and years of effort into, was now being offered to Jasper and Serena. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The injustice of it, the sheer audacity, left me speechless. "But my name is on the mortgage," I finally managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. "I've been paying it for 15 years, every single payment." My mother waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, darling, we appreciate that truly. But it's always been our family home. And now, it's time for the next generation of the family to make memories here." The implied message was clear. I was no longer part of the family in the same way. The next generation was Jasper and Serena. I looked at Jasper, hoping for some support, some acknowledgement of my contributions. He just looked away, fiddling with his phone. Serena, surprisingly, looked uncomfortable, almost guilty. But she said nothing. My parents, however, pressed on, their faces set with a resolve I hadn't seen since they'd decided to rebuild their business. They proposed that I take a lump sum payment, a fraction of what I had invested, certainly not enough to even put a down payment on a comparable home in the area. They suggested I could find a nice apartment, something smaller, more fitting for a single person. They were effectively kicking me out of my own home, the home I had saved, paid for, and helped build, all to make space for my brother's new wife. The betrayal was absolute, cold, and calculated. The conversation ended in a flurry of polite but firm insistence from my parents and stunned silence from me. I remember walking out of that meeting in a daze, the familiar walls of the house suddenly feeling alien, suffocating. Every beam, every floorboard, every meticulously chosen fixture now seemed to mock me, a monument to a sacrifice they had so easily forgotten. My parents followed through with chilling efficiency. Within days, I found my personal belongings, packed neatly into boxes, stacked in the garage. My mother, in a tone that somehow managed to be both apologetic and utterly unyielding, explained that they wanted to make the transition as smooth as possible for Serena and Jasper. I called Olivia, my best friend since kindergarten, the only person who truly knew the depth of my involvement in creating this home. Her disbelief quickly turned to furious indignation. "They can't do this, Elara," she exclaimed, her voice tight with anger. "Your name is on the mortgage. You've paid for everything. This is insane." Her words, though comforting, didn't offer an immediate solution. I was too emotionally drained, too heartbroken to think clearly. The grief was almost as profound as if I had lost a loved one. In a way, I had. I had lost the idea of my family, the unconditional love and loyalty I had always believed in. I found temporary refuge on Olivia's couch, a far cry from the spacious bedroom I had occupied in my house. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. Here I was, a successful financial analyst, a homeowner, albeit one whose home had been usurped, reduced to a couch surfer. The humiliation was immense, but it was nothing compared to the gnawing emptiness of betrayal. My parents, meanwhile, wasted no time. I saw posts on social media, carefully curated images of Serena and Jasper personalizing the house. There was Serena in my redesigned kitchen, laughing as she arranged flowers on the counter. There was Jasper, proudly showing off a new paint. Color in what used to be my home office. Each photo was a fresh stab, a public announcement of my erasure. My mother, in the comments, would gush about finally having a daughter to share these moments with. My emotional state plummeted. I struggled to focus at work, constantly replaying conversations, dissecting every word, searching for a moment where I might have misread the signs, misunderstood their intentions. But there was nothing. Their actions were deliberate. Their words carefully chosen to justify their decision without acknowledging the deep wound they had inflicted. My professional life, once a source of pride and stability, became a shaky foundation. I missed deadlines, made careless mistakes, and my performance reviews, once glowing, began to reflect my distracted state. My boss, a kind but no-nonsense woman, gently suggested I take some time off. The thought of unpaid leave, especially with my newfound homelessness, filled me with a terrifying dread. One evening, browsed through old photo albums at Olivia's apartment, I stumbled upon a stack of documents I had meticulously kept over the years. Receipts for every major renovation, bank statements showing every single mortgage payment I had made, every property tax bill I had paid, every insurance premium. I had always been meticulous about record-keeping, a habit instilled by my finance background. It was a compulsion that now felt like an act of divine intervention. Suddenly, a flicker of hope ignited within me. They couldn't just take it, could they? Not with all this proof. I made an appointment with a lawyer the very next day. He was a seasoned attorney, sharp and direct, with a reputation for handling complex property disputes. As I laid out the stack of documents, his initial skepticism slowly morphed into a look of focused intent. When I showed him the deed, clearly stating all three names, and then the mortgage documents, with my name as the primary borrower, he paused. "Ms. Vance," he said, his voice grave, "your parents have made a colossal mistake. This isn't just about a handshake agreement or family expectations. This is about legal ownership and financial responsibility. You are not just a co-owner. You are the primary obliger on a massive debt attached to this property." He explained that while the deed might be in three names, the mortgage was overwhelmingly my burden, my contractual obligation. If those payments stopped, it was my credit. That would be ruined. My financial future that would be jeopardized. My parents had effectively transferred all the benefits of ownership to Jasper and Serena, while leaving me with all the financial liability. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story, he continued, laying out the legal landscape. My position was strong. Not only did I have a claim to ownership through the deed, but my consistent, undeniable financial contributions over a decade and a half solidified my equitable interest. Their actions, in essence, constituted wrongful eviction and, potentially, fraud. They were trying to benefit from a property while shifting the entire financial risk onto me. He suggested a bold strategy, a lawsuit for quiet title, to formally establish my sole ownership of the property, coupled with a claim for damages due to the wrongful eviction and emotional distress. It was a daunting prospect, but the thought of letting them get away with it, of being erased from my own history, was even more unbearable. For the first time since being kicked out, I felt a surge of something other than despair. I felt a cold, clear resolve. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about reclaiming my dignity, my history, and the truth of what I had built. Armed with newfound resolve and a formidable legal team, I watched as the initial legal filings went out. The first was a cease and desist letter, formally demanding that my parents, Jasper and Serena, vacate the property, refrain from disposing of any of my personal belongings, and acknowledge my undisputed financial contributions. The lawyer explained that this was often the first step, a formal warning before we escalated to court. The response, when it came, was a dismissive letter from their own attorney, a local hotshot known for representing established families, suggesting that I was a disgruntled relative attempting to exploit my kind and generous parents. It was clear they intended to fight. Then came the lawsuit. The initial papers, formally served on my parents, Jasper and Serena, outlined my claims: quiet title, wrongful eviction, and a demand for financial compensation for my substantial investment and the emotional distress caused. The reaction was immediate and predictably explosive. My mother called me, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Elara, how could you? Are you really going to drag your own family through court? This is a betrayal." My father's message was colder, a brief text stating, "You're making a terrible mistake. This will only hurt everyone." Jasper remained silent, but Serena, surprisingly, reached out. Her message was brief, a single line. I'm so sorry, Elara. I had no idea. It was a small crack in their united front, a tiny glimmer of hope that perhaps not everyone was complicit. The legal battle quickly became a public spectacle, at least within our small community. News travels fast in a town like ours, and the story of the Vance family home dispute became the talk of coffee shops and grocery aisles. My parents, well-respected members of the community, spun a narrative of an ungrateful daughter trying to take advantage of them. They painted me as selfish, obsessed with money, and trying to destroy the family. Friends, neighbors, and even distant relatives began to take sides. Some avoided me, unwilling to alienate my influential parents. Others, particularly those who knew the truth of my financial struggles to help my parents over the years, offered quiet words of support, a few even offering to testify to my dedication to the house. One particularly humiliating moment occurred at the local supermarket. I was simply trying to buy groceries, keeping my head down, when I overheard two women gossiping loudly. Can you believe Elara? After everything her parents did for her, trying to kick them out of their own home? The words stung, burning tears in my eyes as I quickly abandoned my cart and fled the store. It felt like I was being publicly shamed, stripped bare and judged by people who only had half the story, the version my parents wanted them to hear. The constant barrage of negativity, the feeling of being ostracized, took a severe toll on my mental and physical health. Sleep became a luxury, plagued by nightmares where I was constantly locked out, watching my family celebrate inside. My appetite vanished, and the dark circles under my eyes became a permanent fixture. Despite the emotional turmoil, my lawyer urged me to remain steadfast, reminding me of the irrefutable evidence I possessed. We began collecting affidavits from contractors who had worked on the house, many of whom remembered me not just as a client, but as an active, hands-on participant who often paid them directly. Elena, the landscape architect who had designed the beautiful garden that was one of my proudest achievements, recalled how I had personally funded the purchase of rare Japanese maples and spent weekends planting them alongside her. You were the driving force behind that garden, Elara, she affirmed. Your parents just enjoyed the fruits of your labor. Her testimony, along with others, began to paint a picture that directly contradicted my parents' narrative. We also secured bank statements going back over 15 years, meticulously documenting every single mortgage payment, every property tax, every utility bill paid from my personal accounts. My lawyer explained that while the deed listed multiple owners, the financial contribution was overwhelmingly mine, creating an equitable interest that transcended mere formal ownership. The sheer volume of evidence was overwhelming, a silent testament to my unwavering commitment to that house. My parents, on the other hand, had very little in the way of counter-evidence. They could claim it was their home, but they couldn't produce a single document showing them paying the mortgage or major renovation costs. Meanwhile, life inside the house, now occupied by Jasper and Serena, continued to be broadcast on social media. Photos of Serena redecorating my study, Jasper hosting poker nights in the living room, and my parents beaming from ear to ear at their new family. It was a constant, painful reminder of what I had lost and what they had so casually taken. The betrayal felt deeper than just property. It felt like a deliberate erasure of my entire contribution to our family's history, a systematic attempt to rewrite our shared past. Every post, every picture, was another nail in the coffin of the daughter they had so easily discarded. The day of the preliminary court hearing arrived, heavy with a sense of impending confrontation. I walked into the courthouse with Olivia by my side, her presence a much-needed anchor. My parents, Jasper and Serena, were already there, seated on the opposite side of the courtroom. My mother's face was a mask of rigid indignation, my father's expression tight and unreadable. Jasper avoided my gaze entirely, while Serena looked pale and visibly uncomfortable. Their lawyer, Mr. Davies, a man with a booming voice and an air of practiced superiority, exchanged a brief, dismissive nod with my attorney. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for cutting straight to the chase, wasted no time. She reviewed our initial filings, then fixed Mr. Davies with a pointed stare. "Mr. Davies," she began, "your clients are asserting full ownership of a property, yet the mortgage documents clearly show Ms. Vance as the primary obliger, solely responsible for payments. Furthermore, Ms. Vance has provided 15 years of bank statements proving these payments. How do you reconcile this?" Davies launched into a well-rehearsed narrative about family arrangements, claiming I had merely loaned money to my parents, and that the mortgage was a technicality designed to help them secure a better interest rate. He tried to paint me as a greedy daughter attempting to seize a home that was never truly mine. But my lawyer was ready. She presented the mountain of evidence, the mortgage statements, the property tax bills, the renovation receipts, the affidavits from contractors, even old emails where my parents had explicitly thanked me for covering large home-related expenses. Each piece of paper was a nail in the coffin of their flimsy argument. Then came the turning point. My lawyer played a short audio recording from my phone. It was a snippet from that last family meeting, a recording I had discreetly made out of an instinctual, uncharacteristic sense of unease. My mother's voice, clear and cold, filled the courtroom. "This house, Elara, it's always been our family home. And now, it's time for the next generation of the family to make memories here." Followed by my own trembling question. "But my name is on the mortgage? I've been paying it for 15 years, every single payment." And her dismissive reply, "Oh, darling, we appreciate that, truly. But it's always been our family home." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. My mother gasped, her face flushing crimson. My father's jaw clenched. Jasper finally looked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning realization. Serena, beside him, buried her face in her hands. The recording, raw and unfiltered, exposed the callous nature of their decision, stripping away the carefully constructed facade of family kindness. It wasn't about a misunderstanding. It was a clear, undeniable act of calculated dispossession. The judge, her expression unreadable, leaned forward. "Mr. Davies," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "The evidence presented by Ms. Vance strongly indicates a clear contractual obligation on her part regarding the mortgage, and a significant financial interest in this property that appears to have been deliberately disregarded. I'm issuing a temporary injunction. Your clients are prohibited from any further alterations or disposals of property at the residence, and Ms. Vance is granted supervised access to retrieve her personal belongings and inspect the premises within 48 hours. Outside the courtroom, as their lawyer huddled with my parents and Jasper, Serena approached me. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her voice barely a whisper. "Elara," she began, her gaze darting nervously towards my family. I just wanted to say again, I'm so sorry. I truly didn't know the full extent of everything. They just told me you were moving on, and the house was available. They said it was always their home." She hesitated, then added, "They told Jasper and me it was a gift. We had no idea you were still paying for it, or how much you'd actually put in." Her words, though late, were a small comfort, a genuine crack in their carefully constructed reality. She offered me a flash drive. "Here," she whispered. "I found some things, photos and some old emails between your mom and dad talking about the house. They mention your contributions. I think you should have them." It was a risky move for her, an act of quiet defiance against my parents, and it gave me a fleeting moment of hope that perhaps not everyone was beyond redemption. Armed with Serena's hidden documents, a trove of old family photos, and more crucially, emails between my parents that corroborated my financial contributions, My legal team moved quickly. The emails, some dating back over a decade, contained casual but undeniable references to Elara's mortgage payments or the money Elara sent for the roof. It was a treasure trove, providing context and proof that their current narrative of me being a gold digger was a fabricated rewrite of history. My lawyer was ecstatic. This is exactly what we needed, Elara. Not just proof of payment, but proof they knew and acknowledged your contributions. The first supervised visit back to the house was a surreal experience. Accompanied by a court official and my lawyer, I stepped back into what had once been my sanctuary. It was jarring. The furniture had been rearranged, paintings removed from the walls, and several of my personal decorative items were missing. Serena had made an attempt to return some of my framed photos and a few sentimental items, but the overall impression was one of a hostile takeover. My mother's favorite ornate rug now covered the antique Persian one I had purchased for the living room. My carefully curated book collection had been haphazardly dumped into boxes, while my father's old, dusty trophies now lined the shelves. It was a calculated act of erasure, a deliberate attempt to scrub my presence from the physical space. We meticulously documented everything. My lawyer brought a professional inventory specialist who photographed every room, noting the changes, and more importantly, the missing items. My custom-made desk, where I had spent countless hours working on my financial projects, was gone. My grandmother's antique writing set, a treasured heirloom, was nowhere to be found. The specialist grimly estimated the value of the missing property. "It's not just about the money, Elara," my lawyer noted. "It's about the deliberate act of taking personal property and the attempt to destroy your connection to this home." The mental and emotional toll of the public battle was immense. My work continued to suffer. I was placed on formal leave, without pay, a terrifying prospect given my now precarious financial situation. Friends from our shared social circles found it increasingly difficult to remain neutral. Some, swayed by my parents' influence and their public performance of victimhood, drifted away. Others, however, stood firm. Olivia was my rock, her small apartment my refuge. She cooked for me, listened to my endless anxieties, and reminded me of my strength. "They want you to break, Elara," she'd tell me, her eyes fierce. "Don't give them the satisfaction." The community's perception began to shift when my lawyer filed a motion for discovery, forcing my parents to disclose their own financial records. The local paper, intrigued by the unfolding drama, ran a piece titled, "Who Really Owns the Vance Home?" that detailed the preliminary court proceedings and the glaring discrepancy between my comprehensive financial records and my parents' sparse ones. It highlighted my long-standing responsibility for the mortgage and the family's long history of financial reliance on me. The article, while painful to read, was a public turning point. Suddenly, the whispers changed. People started asking questions, wondering if there was more to my parents' kindness than met the eye. My parents, faced with the increasing scrutiny and the irrefutable evidence, started to show cracks in their confident facade. During a court-ordered mediation session, my mother's composure finally shattered. She lashed out, accusing me of ruining the family name and desecrating Michael's memory. She often conflated Michael with Michael, my late husband, from the original script, confusing the character. But I was Elara now. My lawyer calmly interjected. "Mrs. Vance, we are here to discuss the legal ownership of the property, not character assassinations." The mediator, a stern but fair woman, quickly brought order, but the outburst confirmed their desperation. It wasn't about principle for them. It was about control and public image. The mediation session ended with no agreement, but my parents' outburst had confirmed their desperation. My lawyer, always strategic, used the opportunity to reinforce the image of my family as unreasonable and emotionally driven. She secured a court order for a full, independent appraisal of the house, along with a detailed inventory of all missing items to be conducted by a neutral third party. This was crucial, as it would not only establish the true value of the property, but also quantify the monetary loss I had suffered due to their actions. The appraiser's report was a shocker, even for me. The house, due to its prime location and the extensive renovations I had personally funded, was valued far higher than any of us had initially imagined. But more importantly, the inventory of missing items revealed a systematic purging of my possessions. Beyond the sentimental items like my grandmother's writing set, there were high-value electronics, original artworks I had collected over the years, and even custom-made furniture that I had designed and paid for. The report estimated the value of the removed property at over $75,000, not including the years of mortgage payments and renovation costs. This wasn't just about reclaiming a home, it was about exposing a calculated theft. The most unexpected development came shortly after the appraisal. I received a cryptic text message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the old coffee shop on Mawai'ifur, Elm Street, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Don't tell anyone. It's about Serena." My heart pounded. It could be a trap, but something in the urgency of the message and the mention of Serena compelled me to go. I informed my lawyer, who advised extreme caution but agreed that potential new information was worth the risk. I arrived precisely at 10 a.m. Sitting alone in a secluded booth was Serena's mother, Mrs. Reynolds. She looked distraught, her usual poised demeanor replaced by an expression of deep concern. "Elara," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "I am so terribly sorry for what my daughter and your family have put you through. I've known your parents for years, and I had no idea of the depths of their deception." She then dropped a bombshell. "Serena has been deeply unhappy. She realized very quickly what was truly happening, but she was pressured by your parents and by Jasper to keep quiet. She's been a nervous wreck. She finally confided in me about everything. Your parents had been planning this for months, even before the wedding. They saw Serena's family money as a way to finally free Jasper from needing your financial support, and they saw your house as the perfect inheritance for him without having to pay for it." Mrs. Reynolds revealed that my parents had actively encouraged Serena and Jasper to move into the house immediately after the wedding, promising them it was all taken care of. They had assured Serena that my name on the mortgage was just a formality, and that I would happily move on to a smaller place. But Serena had quickly become uncomfortable with their increasingly aggressive tactics towards me, particularly after she found some of the old mortgage statements and realized the full extent of my financial burden. She kept trying to talk to Jasper, Mrs. Reynolds continued, tears welling in her eyes. But he just brushed her off, saying, "Mom and Dad know best. Serena even tried to subtly leave things for you to find, hoping you'd catch on. That flash drive she gave you? She deliberately planted it in a box of Michael's. Again, Michael from the original script. Old papers, hoping you'd stumble upon it." This revelation struck me deeply. Serena hadn't been an unwitting accomplice. She had been a reluctant participant, trapped by her marriage and her in-laws' manipulation. "Serena is filing for divorce," Mrs. Reynolds confessed. "She can't live like this, and she wants to help you. She's willing to testify, to provide everything she knows, including more emails and texts from your parents that expose their plan." This was the alliance I never expected. Serena, who had initially seemed part of the problem, was now offering to be part of the solution. Her testimony, coming from within their inner circle, would be devastating to my parents' case. It would expose their calculated betrayal, not just of me, but of their own son's wife, whom they had used as a pawn in their scheme. It was a turning point, not just in the legal battle, but in my understanding of forgiveness and the complexities of human relationships. With Serena's willingness to testify and the new evidence she provided, our legal strategy shifted from defensive to aggressive. My lawyer immediately filed a motion for an emergency hearing, citing the newly discovered evidence of a concerted effort to disinherit me and the apparent coercion of Serena. The court granted it, setting a date just 2 weeks later, giving my parents' attorney little time to prepare. The courtroom was packed that day, the air thick with anticipation. My parents and Jasper sat rigid, their faces grim. Serena sat next, to her mother, looking nervous but resolute. My lawyer began by methodically presenting the new evidence, the emails from my parents detailing their plans, the texts to Serena urging her to stick to the story, and finally, Serena herself took the stand. Serena's testimony was devastating. Her voice trembled at first, but as she spoke, a quiet strength emerged. She recounted how my parents had promised her and Jasper the house as a gift, how they had coached her on what to say, and how she had slowly realized the depth of their deception. She described my mother's subtle manipulations, her father's quiet coercion, and Jasper's complicity. She even admitted to deliberately leaving the flash drive for me to find, a desperate attempt to help me without overtly betraying her then-husband and in-laws. Her honest, tearful account resonated deeply, painting a clear picture of calculated betrayal. My mother, unable to control herself, erupted. "She's lying! She's a manipulative little snake just like Elara." The judge, however, was swift to intervene, warning her of contempt. The outburst only solidified Serena's credibility and highlighted my mother's desperation. Jasper was then called to the stand. Under cross-examination, my lawyer pressed him on his knowledge of my financial contributions. He stammered, contradicted himself, and eventually admitted that he had always known I paid the mortgage. But it was always Mom and Dad's house, he mumbled, a desperate attempt to cling to the narrative. My lawyer's retort was sharp. "And who was paying for Mom and Dad's house for 15 years, Mr. Vance?" Jasper had no answer, his eyes darting to his parents, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. The climax came when my lawyer presented the final, irrefutable evidence. The bank's own records, showing that the only payments made on the mortgage, consistently for 15 years, came from my personal account. Not a single payment originated from my parents' or Jasper's accounts. It was a cold, hard truth, devoid of emotional manipulation or family allegories. The judge, known for her stoic demeanor, leaned forward. "Mr. Davies," she addressed my parents' attorney, her voice devoid of emotion, "your clients have claimed ownership, yet they have provided no evidence of financial contribution to the mortgage or significant upkeep. On the other hand, Ms. Vance has presented overwhelming, undisputed evidence of 15 years of sole mortgage payments, substantial renovation costs, and testimony from multiple sources, including the co-defendant, confirming her primary financial and physical investment in the property. Furthermore, there is compelling evidence of a concerted, deceptive effort to deprive Ms. Vance of her legal rights during a period of vulnerability." She paused, looking directly at my parents. "This court finds your actions to be not only legally indefensible but morally reprehensible. You have attempted to dispossess your daughter of her rightful property, built through her immense personal sacrifice, and then subjected her to public humiliation and emotional distress." The ruling came down swiftly. The judge confirmed my sole ownership of the property, recognizing my joint tenancy on the deed and my overwhelming equitable interest due to my financial contributions. She ordered my parents and Jasper to immediately vacate the premises. Crucially, she also ordered them to return all of my personal property, with significant monetary penalties for anything that could not be recovered. The court also levied substantial damages for wrongful eviction and emotional distress, along with full reimbursement of my legal fees, citing their vexatious and bad faith conduct. The total sum was staggering, far more than I had anticipated. Justice, though long, delayed, was finally served. The days following the court's final ruling were a blur of emotion. Relief, exhaustion, and a profound sense of vindication washed over me. My parents, reeling from the judge's scathing decision and the significant financial penalties, quickly vacated the house. They left it in a state of disarray, a final act of petty spite, scuffed floors, crayon marks on walls, and a general air of neglect. But it was my mess now, and I could fix it. Returning to the house felt like a rebirth. The locks were changed, the old keys, symbols of betrayal, discarded. Stepping across the threshold with my new key, I felt a wave of calm wash over me. It was no longer a battleground, but a home waiting to be healed. Olivia was there, of course, armed with cleaning supplies and an unshakable determination. Together, we meticulously cleaned, repaired, and restored. Every scrub of a stain, every repaint of a wall, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The house slowly shed the layers of their brief, resentful occupation, transforming back into the sanctuary it was always meant to be. The special master, appointed by the court, oversaw the return of my personal property. It was a humiliating process for my parents, who were forced to bring back items they had either tried to hide or had claimed as family heirlooms. My grandmother's writing set, my custom desk, my beloved artwork, they all returned, albeit some with minor damage. The missing pieces were accounted for in the monetary damages. Watching them unload the truck, their faces grim and defeated, I felt no triumph, only a quiet sadness for what we had lost as a family. The judgment, the monetary damages, and the legal fees covered meant I was financially secure. I didn't need to return to work immediately, which was a blessing. Instead, I poured my energy into restoring the house and, more importantly, myself. I started therapy, processing not just the betrayal but the deep grief of losing the family I thought I had. My therapist helped me understand that their actions weren't a reflection of my worth, but a manifestation of their own insecurities and a long-standing pattern of control. Public opinion shifted dramatically. The local newspaper, now with access to the full court transcripts and Serena's testimony, published a follow-up article that painted a starkly different picture. The truth of my decades-long financial support, their calculated deception, and Serena's brave testimony were laid bare. The community, initially quick to judge, now offered apologies, support, and a newfound respect. Local businesses, who had distanced themselves, now offered gestures of goodwill, some even offering free services for the house's repairs. My relationship with Serena deepened unexpectedly. After her divorce from Jasper, she became a true friend. We shared coffee, stories, and the understanding that came from navigating a toxic family dynamic. She spoke of her own journey of realizing the manipulativeness of my parents and Jasper, and the courage it took for her to break free. Her presence in my life became a testament to unexpected alliances formed in the crucible of adversity. Jasper, surprisingly, reached out a few months later. His marriage gone, his family fractured, he seemed genuinely remorseful. He admitted he had been blind, caught in our parents' manipulation, and expressed regret for not standing up for me. It was a small step, and while the pain he had caused wouldn't simply vanish, his apology offered a glimmer of hope for a future, albeit different connection. My parents remained estranged. The legal battle had severed a bond that, in retrospect, was built on obligation more than unconditional love. It was a painful realization, but also a liberating one. I realized that family is not solely defined by blood, but by love, respect, and mutual support. The family I now cherished was composed of Olivia, my loyal, unwavering friend, Serena, my unexpected ally, and the community members who, once informed of the truth, rallied around me. The house, our beautiful home, is now truly mine. I've continued to pour my love and vision into it, creating new memories, but always honoring the foundation of hard work and dreams it was built upon. I've turned the formal dining room, once a site of uncomfortable family dinners, into a vibrant creative studio, a space for my design work. I've even started offering pro bono financial planning advice to individuals dealing with similar family property disputes, turning my trauma into a source of help for others. One quiet evening, sitting on the porch swing I had installed years ago, watching the sun set over the Japanese maples I had planted, I felt a profound sense of peace. The storm had passed. I had lost a family, but I had reclaimed my home, my dignity, and discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. My journey, from the betrayal of being kicked out to the triumph of justice, was a testament to resilience and a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest betrayals lead to the most profound acts of self-discovery and freedom. Have you ever faced a moment when family turned against you, forcing you to find your own strength? Share your stories of resilience and reclaiming your narrative in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and like this video. Your support helps me share these difficult but important stories of overcoming life's most challenging moments. Remember, true family stands by you, no matter what. Thank you for joining me on this powerful chapter of my story, and I wish you the strength to face whatever challenges life may bring your way.